Today's tough question is Josh Heupel said the Vols need a spring game since they're playing away from home to start the year. Do you believe that? Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Jimmy Himes, let me start with you. Do you buy that Josh Heupel says he's excited about a spring game and he needs that because Tennessee plays away from home and he wants his team to be in front of a crowd?
Okay, let me make sure I heard you right. Did you say spring game or spring scrimmage? Because
spring
that's
game.
what they are.
Before you give your take, let me read the full quote real quick.
Well, I'm being facetious here. I'm sorry.
Oh.
because they are spring scrimmages, right? That's what they do. They do situational stuff. They go 3rd and 1s. I mean, I don't consider them a, quote, game. Maybe y'all do. But what I've seen is more situational stuff. So I look at them as scrimmages. I don't look at them as being all that valuable, although I do think you want to get as many reps as you can for, let's say, a freshman tackle named David Sanders or newcomers at receiver. So I can, or newcomers in the offensive line. So I can see getting as many snaps as you can. How does that prepare you for going on the road to play Syracuse and Atlanta? I don't think it does. So I don't see a correlation between a, quote, spring game and you're opening the season on the road. Do you?
No, I don't. And here's what I think, and Caleb, feel free to jump in here. I think he's playing the crowd a little bit. I think he wants people to show up because Danny Watt wants people to show up.
But they're limiting the crowd, by the way.
Right. I think if it were up to him, there wouldn't be a spring game. I think most coaches would not have a spring game. They've had spring practice, but they wouldn't have a spring game. I don't think they like anything about it.
So the full quote, and I wanted to give the context of it.
Okay.
Heupel's exact quote was, "It's important in particular for our young players to get a taste of what it's going to be like in the fall to play in front of a crowd, big stadium. We open up on the road this year. You don't want that to be the first time they've played in front of a bunch of people." And then he adds, "So that experience, it can create urgency," when speaking of a spring game, "understanding what it's going to feel like as they finish up spring ball and go into summer. End of the day, we have to accelerate our growth curve. A spring game in those settings is part of accelerating their growth." Unquote. So you guys give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I can buy into wanting to have your players play in front of a crowd of what, 45,000 roughly. I think that's what they're limiting it to. How does that translate into going down to Atlanta to play in front of what should probably be over 70,000? I don't know, but I do understand that. I do think there is some value to some of the young players that have not been on your roster before. There are 23 freshmen. There are a handful of transfers that are on your roster. There are actually some guys that haven't played a whole lot that may be in starting roles that could probably use a little bit of this experience. So I understand that. Do I think it has a huge impact on playing against Syracuse at a neutral site? Not really.
What about, and Jimmy, my thoughts or my question to you on this is, would Josh Heupel be saying this every year, or is he saying this specifically this year because there's so many newcomers that he's trying to incorporate into his rotation, whether that be on the offensive line or at wide receiver?
The latter, because he's got so many new players. I mean, you're looking at least 27 that I can think of, and there may be more. That's 23 freshmen and 4 transfers, right? I think I've got my numbers right. So, yeah, I could see that. And then the next year they may only have 10 freshmen that come in at midterm, although that trend has been growing. Who knows how many in the portal they'll be bringing in. But I do think with such, they're losing so many really good players, in particular on offense, where you have got to fill some voids. So I think this is more of a unique situation. I'm not sure he would have said this. Well, he probably would have said it the first year he was here because, again, you want to get as many reps as you can. But after that, I'm not sure he would have said the same thing.
Let's set up today's tough question if we can. The spring game, is it valuable or not? We can make that our poll question. I want to ask Jimmy, though, and it's brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, a slight variation on that. And that is, if Josh Heupel could, would he just have a closed real practice like they have throughout the rest of the spring? Brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. Banks & Jones.
So, Jimmy, I think you get, 16 practices, or is it 20 practices? I can't remember. But
I think it's 15, I think.
Is it 15? Okay, 15. So that 15th practice will be the spring game, the orange and white game. If it were up to Josh Heupel, would he just have a real scrimmage that's closed like the rest of his practices and not even worry about being in front of fans in his heart of hearts?
Well, not this year, based on what he said, right? Because he wants his players to play in front of a crowd of about 45,000 to prepare them for going to a road game. So this year, I would say no. If he was opening the season against Akron, I would say yes. He would just as soon have a closed practice. And, one of the things they used to do, and they don't anymore, which I thought was kind of valuable, they used to have the spring game was kind of a fan day, fan appreciation. And you could go down on the field and get autographs and meet with players and meet with coaches and so forth, which was a way for them to mingle. One reason they did away with it is because you might have had 2 people lined up for one player and 200 lined up for your quarterback.
I wasn't aware that was the reason.
Yeah, and so a lot of the fans would go away ticked off because they didn't get the autograph of the player that they wanted, and they thought they were actually alienating more people than they were pleasing. So that was one reason they did away with it.
Let me ask you two a question real quick, and because you guys,
by the way, nice coat, Caleb. I like that.
Oh, thank you. Because you guys both covered this team, and it's a little bit different, but maybe it's similar because obviously there's a trend right now of moving away from the spring game. And Josh Heupel, because he's got a lot of new talent, is doing the reverse, saying, I got to get these guys ready. Is that in any way reminiscent to you guys of 1998? The trend was growing of not having quarterbacks get hit in spring practice, and then they take the green shirt or red shirt off T. Martin in 98 to make sure he gets hit to get him ready. And did that help, hurt, or not matter when he opened the year at Syracuse? Funny enough, ironically, Syracuse, that was a top 25 team on the road.
I think it helped that they took the jersey off T. Martin and made him a runner. I do remember this. The offense had trouble making a first down in the spring against that defense. Their offense was terrible. And they realized the defense was pretty good. But they wanted T. Martin to play they knew he was going to be asked to run a lot as opposed to Peyton Manning. Now, the truth be told, T. Martin wasn't pleased with that. He thought he should have gotten the same treatment as Peyton Manning.
That's right.
Don't hit me. Don't hit me. But Tennessee was like, he's going to get hit. That's the offense we're going to run. So let's get him prepared for that. And if you look at what they did against Syracuse, where he rip off like a 64-yard run to help set up the game-winning field goal?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was a drive before was when they were down 27-24, and it was like a 3rd and 9, and he ripped it off, and that was where he threw that touchdown pass to Peerless Price, the second one.
So his running ability in that game and some of the plays he made with his feet were critical to Tennessee beating Syracuse. So it's kind of hard to argue with their philosophy during the spring, considering they won the national championship. But the thinking behind it was, we got a quarterback that's going to get hit running it. Let's get him used to it.
Yeah, the problem with making the quarterbacks live, though, is Joey Matthews still has a twitch. That defense ate him alive, destroyed his confidence, and I watched him in high school. He was a fine quarterback. I thought he was going to be good, a little heavy-footed, but great arm. And it was just like he got through that spring, and it was like, I'm ready to. I think he's a police officer now. Is that right?
Yeah, he's protecting quarterbacks.
Right. All right. So, yeah, I miss the days. I just wish they would turn it into some sort of signing event and not even count it as a practice so that Tennessee would get an extra practice. That would help them. Or make it a skills challenge like the pro day that they had. Something a little bit different. But I just think with what they're doing now, it almost looks like a sham. And I know exactly what Josh Heupel's saying, and it's to serve the fans and get them to show up. And maybe there's some truth to playing in front of players, but in front of fans. But I just don't think he really likes it.